I studied physics and engineering in undergrad. I have a bachelor's degree in physics, another bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, and a master's in aerospace engineering. And after I went through that long, process of education, I ended up working at Lockheed Martin in Marietta, Georgia, which is just north of Atlanta. So some people may not be familiar, but Lockheed Martin is a defense contractor that designs and sells aircraft. And I can't be too specific about what I worked on, but I was a structural analyst for aircraft platforms. Found the work really engaging and challenging, but after a few years, I was finding myself having to make a decision between staying in a technical route or, taking the other option of going into management, making higher level business decisions, and that's the route I wanted to take. And additionally, at that point, I was interested in a more dynamic lifestyle, and I also was interested in pursuing a different industry other than aerospace engineering. So that was what led me to choose to pursue an MBA. I was primarily, I guess first I'll say, I'm from the southeast portion of the United States. I'm from specifically Knoxville, Tennessee, and my family lives in North Carolina. So I was mostly looking at schools in that region, schools in North Carolina and then Emory, and that was really about it, only a small handful of schools. I also was looking to do, I was interested partially in consulting, and Emory is very well known for its placement in consulting, especially in the Atlanta area. So I applied and ended up really falling in love with the culture. I spent a weekend on campus in March before matriculation, and it felt so comfortable and natural for me to get to know the student body. I really came away with the impression that the school is full of hard workers, but it's not cutthroat or super competitive. More so, it's the sort of place where everybody supports each other, and so I just felt at home there. So in addition to that, the school is small, which is nice because you get to know all of your classmates. The faculty is amazing because Atlanta, it's the I'd say the premier business school in Atlanta, and it attracts a lot of top talent in terms of faculty. And then finally, the career placement ratings are fantastic. It's almost 99% nearly every year. So I knew that it was a safe option in terms of walking away with a better career than I had before. I am an ambassador, and in fact, I'm on kind of the leadership team of the Goizueta ambassadors, and we do have a portal where you can reach out to an ambassador prior to even applying to Goizueta, and that'll give you a sense of the school and what to expect. So that's very helpful, and I did do that. But you can also just go on LinkedIn and find alumni that way, and I also did that. So I actually reached out to two separate alumni and talked to them about what did you do before business school? Why did you choose Goizueta? How has that helped you? And how do you feel about your career now? And even though neither of them knew who I was, and they were also in senior level management at one of the firms I was looking at, they still took the time to get on Zoom with me and talk to me, which I found very just heartening. It was very nice of them to do that. They've built a culture of helping each other. It's tight-knit. It's a smaller school, but that works in some ways to its benefit because it means that you don't see Goizueta grads everywhere. So when you do run into one, it's kind of like a little badge. It's something that you have in common with them. And they tend to stick together and be very supportive of each other. So I think it's part of it's the size of the school, and part of it is the collaborative nature that they've built there. I started getting more and more technical, and I felt myself diving deeper and deeper into the technical rabbit hole. But the things that I ended up being more interested in were the top level questions of why do we design these particular aircraft? How do we interact with the customer? What is the procedure by which a foreign government, for example, would buy a US military aircraft? How do we support defense goals, both domestic and abroad? All of those became equally as interesting to me as the work that I was doing. And ultimately, I decided that it would be better for my career if I asked those questions rather than some of the technical questions that I was working on previously. For the most part, it's been fairly smooth. I think, engineers are lucky to have a strong quantitative background. So some of the more quantitative courses like microeconomics or finance, managerial finance tend to come a little bit more naturally. However, sometimes the questions aren't so clear cut in business, and there's not one equation or one solution that gives you an answer. And I think for some engineers, they struggle with that idea, knowing that it's not going to be a perfect answer to what they're looking for. So you do have to shift your mentality from there's a clear-cut answer that we're going to solve for to it's kind of ambiguous. And I think that engineers have to make that transition when they switch from rote engineering work to business type questions. And then as far as my classmates, I have a handful. One of my friends was also performed structural work, except he was mainly working in civil engineering. I had friends who studied systems engineering. A buddy who also he's now going into banking, but he studied chemical engineering. Many others have also studied engineering, but they didn't necessarily work in engineering. So I'd say it's not unheard of for engineers to go into business school, at least the ones that are gregarious and fairly social. I have to also give credit to the school. They give resources, they make resources readily available to you to navigate through this transition. So I guess I'll go through 4 parts of it. So the first would just be the faculty. They understand what it's like to be coming from a totally different field. They know exactly the type of student that gets an MBA. So they're very patient with their explanations, and they always make themselves very available for office hours to talk through concepts that you may not be familiar with. So that's the first thing. The second thing, like I said before, is that especially at Emory, the culture is very collaborative. So I did a lot of homework on my own, but if I ever ran into questions or I was stuck on anything, it was very easy to reach out to my classmates who were very willing to help. There was no competition there. The third bit would be the CMC, or the Career Management Center. If you're ever confused on what career path is right for you, or you're trying to figure out, I don't know if I want to do consulting or banking or go into tech or whatever, they're always open. In fact, one of the women at the Career Center basically had an open door policy, and I stopped by probably once a week, sometimes just to chat with her. And then the final piece of this is the alumni network. So it's very strong, mostly based in Atlanta. Many of them have had similar backgrounds to the people currently in school, like engineering. And so they know exactly what that process was like as well. And they will always be willing to guide you through. So no matter, what issue crops up, you'll almost always find somebody that's willing to support you. In the first semester, which I think is pretty common for most MBA programs, we do take required courses that are fairly standardized. So you'll take microeconomics, and you'll take managerial finance and marketing, and some sort of data analytics class. So first semester, everybody takes the same classes. But then, as you said, you can start to take electives your second semester, and then fourth semester. And the answer to your question is yes, my future career goals definitely influenced the electives that I wanted to take. And the 3 areas that I'm most focused on are strategy, analytics, and increasingly finance, actually. I didn't think at the time when I first started that I would be as interested in finance as I am, but I've found it to be very, very relevant. So all my electives are essentially in one of those 3 categories, and that's essentially it. And Emory's been very happy to do that. One other thing that I'll mention is that I'm very interested in energy as a future industry that I would like to enter. And I had the opportunity to pursue a directed study, which is a course for credit on any topic you wish, as long as it's business related. So I did a directed study with a professor that I'm very close with on nuclear power. It ended up being one of the best things I've done at Emory. It was extremely time consuming, but it was well worth it. And I was really glad that the school allowed me to have that opportunity. I think that they have changed a little bit, or rather I think the MBA has actually broadened my idea of what I wanted out of my career. So just as an example, when I was first applying to MBA programs, I was interested in consulting, but specifically with boutique firms that worked in energy. And I actually had my mind changed by some of the people I met while I was on campus to consider a broader range of options. I had one person tell me you should consider the larger firms as well. One person told me you should also consider investment banking, because you could maybe eventually try private equity or venture capital. So I started thinking about, okay, maybe I would want to do internal strategy somewhere. Maybe I could try consulting at the bigger firms. Maybe I could do something, go work at a startup. And I am going to one of the bigger consulting firms, but for whatever, 5-10 years down the line, I've now also started to consider the things that I just mentioned. So staying in consulting, going to a startup, maybe entering PE or VC if that's available to me. And I don't think I would have thought about any of those options had I not done the MBA. Many of those businesses that I mentioned, the ones that are based in Atlanta or have offices in Atlanta, come to campus actively to recruit. So that could be tech companies, consulting firms, banks, you name it. They'll come on, they'll meet students, they'll talk to them, and alumni will hand you their business cards, very frequently. So you start to build a Rolodex of people at these companies in the city that you can contact. And many of these companies I didn't even really know that much about until they came to campus, and you get access to that network pretty much immediately, and in some cases before you even start the program, like I did. Sometimes these companies will invite Emory students to off-campus events, but often there are on-campus events, many of which are organized by the CMC. And again, that's the Career Management Center. One thing the Emory CMC will also do is they will, on your behalf, make connections to firms that may not come onto campus. So if you're interested in a particular company, but you don't know how to approach recruiting with them, they will do that for you. I mentioned before, I was an aerospace engineer. I loved that work. I really, really did. And I loved my company, but I became very interested in energy, and specifically renewables and carbon-free energy. So what I want to eventually work on is the energy transition. And that could be, helping to figure out future policies that aid the energy transition. It could be looking into companies that are promising and making investments, or it could be helping businesses make decisions to best navigate the future energy transition. And I'd like to be able to do that at BCG. I really, really enjoyed the people that I met at the firm, and I'm very much looking forward to interning there this summer. So 3 to 5 years from now, I would hope that I'm still there and starting to specialize. You are very much encouraged to take a generalist mindset and try all sorts of different industries. But if my interests still stay within energy, I would hope to eventually specialize and work primarily within that field. And then after that, well, that's a little bit beyond the timeline that you asked for. I could see myself potentially staying there if they'll keep me, but I'd also consider, like I said, venture capital and making investments in clean energy, or potentially going into internal strategy at a renewables or some sort of utility company.